While most videos about the Vanderbilt dynasty you'll find online focus on how much money they made, spent, and eventually lost, the real tragedy of America's richest family unfolded in secret. You see, the scandalous rise and fall of the Vanderbilt family is rarely ever told as it truly was, an epic downfall stemming from parenting failures that swung from brutal authoritarianism to neglectful indulgence, of children warped by wealth they never earned, and of a dynasty where money became both god and demon. Thus, in today's episode of Old Money Luxury, we share a one-of-a-kind analysis of how America's richest dynasty was doomed from its very inception, not by spending habits, but by the mental patterns established by its founder and amplified through each successive generation.
Cornelius Vanderbilt had what he called a mania for money. It's all he cared about. He didn't care about his family so much, he cared about the money. And that mania for money, that pathology, infected every subsequent generation in ways that it's just kind of fascinating to see how it kind of infected them.
Cornelius Vanderbilt's relationship with money bordered on madness. "I have been insane on the subject of money-making all my life," he once confessed, offering a rare glimpse into his self-awareness. This was no exaggeration from a successful businessman. It stood as the raw admission of a man whose identity had fused completely with wealth accumulation. Anderson Cooper, his great-great-great-grandson, assessed him bluntly. "I actually started out thinking maybe he was a psychopath." Cooper eventually concluded that money had become his sole reason for being. The Commodore's fixation transcended any desire for luxury or comfort. "I don't care half so much about making money as I do about making my point and coming out ahead," he declared, revealing that wealth served as his scoreboard in an endless competition. This psychological framework would later spread through the family dynasty like a virus. Born in Staten Island in 1794, Vanderbilt quit school at age 11 to work on his father's ferry. By 16, he had borrowed $100 from his mother to purchase his first boat. The seed of obsession had been planted early, a boy calculating profits while other children played. The human toll of this obsession proved devastating. He committed his wife to a mental asylum when she became an inconvenience. He sent his son, Cornelius Jeremiah, to the same institution, possibly because of his homosexuality. Every relationship bowed before his financial ambitions. As a father, the Commodore ruled with iron-fisted cruelty. He habitually demeaned his son, William Henry, labeling him a blockhead and a blatherskite, a person who speaks nonsense. This verbal assault cut so deep that William Henry suffered a nervous breakdown at age 19. Rather than offering support, the Commodore banished his son to manage a small family farm on Staten Island, effectively discarding the disappointment. His indifference extended to his 9 daughters, treating them as afterthoughts in his dynastic plans. The emotional damage extended beyond his children. Vanderbilt wielded his fortune as a weapon even after death, bequeathing 95% to William Henry, while the remaining 5% went to his other 10 children. Money functioned as his ultimate control mechanism, extending his tyranny beyond the grave. His business tactics matched his personal brutality. He crushed competitors without hesitation, treating business as warfare and accumulation as conquest. Starting with ferries, then steamships, and finally railroads, he consolidated transportation monopolies through manipulation and ruthlessness. Competitors often paid him substantial sums simply to operate elsewhere, monuments to the fear he inspired. His steamship monopolies earned him the title Commodore, a nickname that followed him even as he transitioned to railroad dominance. When challenged, he famously declared, "What do I care about the law? Ain't I got the power?" By his death in 1877, he had amassed approximately $105 million, making the Vanderbilts the wealthiest family on the planet. What the Commodore failed to anticipate was how his pathological relationship with money would transform across generations. The obsession with making money would gradually mutate into an equally destructive obsession with spending it. The ruthless focus that built the fortune would give way to an aimless, undisciplined approach that would ultimately destroy it. And the scars from his authoritarian parenting would ripple through the family line, creating generations of children traumatized by harshness or crippled by permissiveness. The Commodore's money pathology had begun its devastating journey through the Vanderbilt bloodline.
So the major question when it comes to the Vanderbilt Empire after the Patriarch's death is what did Billy Vanderbilt do with the money? And to his credit, Billy ended up doubling the money with time, carefully maintaining the Vanderbilt fortune through the opulence and performance of the Gilded Age.
William Henry Vanderbilt emerged from his father's shadow like a man climbing from darkness into blinding light. The man who would eventually double the staggering Vanderbilt fortune began his journey as the family's great disappointment. The Commodore's constant ridicule crushed him so thoroughly that at 19 his mind fractured, a nervous breakdown that would forever alter his relationship with both wealth and family. After his collapse, William Henry found himself exiled to a muddy patch of Staten Island farmland. Banished from his father's empire, he discovered an unexpected talent buried beneath the weight of paternal disapproval. The failing farm blossomed under his hand. More remarkably, the struggling Staten Island Railroad, a failing enterprise, transformed into a profitable venture through his unexpected business acumen. The Commodore, returning from a European tour in 1853, found his blockhead son had become something unforeseen, competent. This psychological resurrection from broken, dismissed heir to trusted successor came at a profound interior cost. Unlike his father, who worshipped at the altar of wealth, William Henry developed an almost superstitious fear of his own fortune. Massive wealth provided no advantages over moderate wealth, he would mutter like a man haunted by a curse. His fortune brought him nothing but anxiety, the complaint of a man drowning in golden waters. In a moment of startling clarity, William Henry once gazed at his neighbor's modest home and observed, "He isn't worth 100th part as much as I am, but he has more of the real pleasures of life than I have. His house is as comfortable as mine, even if it didn't cost so much. His team is about as good as mine. His opera box is next to mine. His health is better than mine, and he will probably outlive me, and he can trust his friends." The words hung in the air, a billionaire's confession of emptiness. This fundamental ambivalence coexisted strangely with ruthless business tactics. When questioned about discontinuing a popular express train, William Henry infamously declared, "The public be damned. I don't take any stock in this silly nonsense about working for anybody but our own." This psychological resurrection from broken, dismissed heir to trusted successor came at a profound interior cost. Unlike his father, who worshipped at the altar of wealth, William Henry developed an almost superstitious fear of his own fortune. When William Henry inherited his father's fortune in 1877, the scars of childhood emotional abuse shaped his approach to his own children. While the Commodore had been described as a mean man, never kindly or loving, like a dictator with his children, William Henry swung to the opposite extreme. He lavished his children with European travels and cultural experiences, taking his youngest son, George, on art collecting expeditions by the time the boy was 12. A painting titled "Going to the Opera," commissioned by William Henry, spoke volumes, depicting the family gathered in their mansion, older children dressed for the opera, servants hovering in the background. The image captured what he had craved as a child, family warmth wrapped in visible prosperity. Unlike the Commodore, who concentrated 95% of wealth in a single heir, William Henry dispersed his fortune widely. Each child received approximately $10 million, transforming them into what Arthur T. Vanderbilt II would later describe as a bunch of mini emperors, not one showing any interest in making money or even keeping track of it, just spending it. William Henry's frail health cut short his reign at the pinnacle of American prosperity, and he resigned his railroad presidencies in 1883 due to chronic sickness. Just 2 years later, at age 64, he collapsed during a business meeting with Baltimore and Ohio Railroad President Robert Garrett. His death came merely 8 years after inheriting, fatally limiting his time to transmit financial discipline to his children. The psychological pendulum had swung from the Commodore's cruel authoritarian parenting to William Henry's indulgent permissiveness. The father, who suffered from too little nurturing, gave his children too much freedom. The man who endured harsh expectations imposed virtually none on his heirs. This unspoken psychological reaction against his own childhood would shape the dynasty's fate more profoundly than any business decision he ever made.
Mr. Vanderbilt has no fads or hobbies. He is a man of strong domestic tastes and finds his chief enjoyment in the family circle. The Times, 1893.
The gilded dynasty needed a golden child, and Cornelius Vanderbilt II fit the role perfectly. Heir to a business empire and bearer of his grandfather's name, he alone would navigate the treacherous waters between wealth's creation and its inevitable dissolution. Born in 1843 on Staten Island, he emerged as the favorite grandson of the fearsome Commodore and eldest son of William Henry. Unlike his father, who suffered beneath the Commodore's caustic criticism, young Cornelius received validation from the beginning. His work ethic, while clerking at the Shoe and Leather Bank in New York City, endeared him to his grandfather, the Commodore, who was a strong believer in personal industry. This early approval created a fundamentally different psychological foundation than his father's nervous breakdown and exile. While William Henry had scraped and clawed for his father's respect, Cornelius II inherited it. This psychological security manifested in a dual approach to wealth, maintaining his father's business acumen while developing an unprecedented philanthropy. He built two of America's most spectacular mansions, the Vanderbilt Chateau and the Breakers, but rarely had time to enjoy them. Instead, he made a habit of donating much of his income to various charitable causes. Yet beneath this veneer of success and generosity lurked a familiar Vanderbilt trait: authoritarian control. Cornelius II proved to be a hard-nosed man in his relations with his older children. When his son Cornelius III announced in 1896 that he wished to marry Grace Graham Wilson, Cornelius II refused permission. No reason was given. The Patriarch's word was enough. When the young couple married anyway, Cornelius II responded with the ultimate weapon in a wealthy man's arsenal: disinheritance. The hard-nosed approach to his elder children contrasted sharply with his treatment of his youngest son, Reginald Claypool Vanderbilt, born in 1880. By Reginald's birth, Cornelius II had reached 37 years of age, established, secure, and increasingly indulgent. The family now occupied the pinnacle of New York society. Reginald grew up knowing only extreme privilege, never witnessing the striving that built the colossal fortune. Then came the turning point. In 1896, when Reginald was 16, Cornelius II suffered a stroke. This health crisis compelled him to reduce his active business involvement precisely during his youngest son's most formative years. The timing proved catastrophic for the family fortune. With his father's influence waning, Reginald's character development took a dangerous turn. The final blow fell on the 12th of September, 1899. Father Cornelius II died of a cerebral hemorrhage shortly after 6 a.m. at his home on West 57th Street in Manhattan. Reginald was only 19 years old, a critical juncture when financial discipline and business acumen should have been firmly instilled. Instead, the heir now had unfettered access to millions without the tempering guidance his forebears had received. Cornelius II left an estate valued at nearly $73 million, with $20 million in real estate alone. His older children, those shaped by his stricter parenting, largely maintained the family's business interests and philanthropic endeavors. But Reginald, the child of his father's declining years, followed a radically different path. While his brother Cornelius III wanted to make a contribution to society, Reginald abandoned Yale after 2 years to pursue horses and high living. The psychological journey across 3 generations had reached its pivotal moment. The founder's monomania for money-making had morphed into William Henry's ambivalent wealth expansion, then into Cornelius II's wealth management and philanthropy. Now in Reginald's hands, the fortune faced its greatest test. A young man with all the resources of a Vanderbilt, but none of the psychological foundation that had built the family empire. The pudgy figure in the roadster presented a startling spectacle to rural onlookers. Reginald Claypool Vanderbilt, heir to one of history's greatest fortunes, raced down country lanes with a bull terrier perched beside him, burning fuel as recklessly as he burned money. Born in 1880, as the youngest son of Cornelius II, Reginald emerged from a perfect storm of psychological vulnerability. His great-grandfather had died before his birth, his grandfather, William Henry, when he was merely 5. His father suffered a stroke when Reginald was 16, then died when the boy was 19. 3 generations of financial discipline had evaporated, leaving only wealth without wisdom. The consequences manifested immediately and spectacularly. On his 21st birthday, Having gained access to an inheritance of $15.5 million, approximately $460 million in today's currency, Reginald celebrated by losing $70,000 at the gambling table in a single night. This staggering sum, equivalent to over $2 million today, disappeared without a moment's hesitation or remorse. Yale University suffered his indifferent attendance for 2 years before he abandoned education entirely. His profligacy knew no bounds. He commissioned solid gold nameplates for each of his 60 thoroughbred horses. He purchased hundreds of automobiles on pure whim. During one legendary evening at the roulette tables, he hemorrhaged $120,000, nearly $4 million in contemporary valuation. Over his lifetime, Reginald inherited $25 million, approximating $742 million today, all of which vanished through drink and gambling. By age 42, doctors delivered a stark prognosis: stop drinking or die. Reginald responded by marrying 17-year-old socialite Gloria Morgan. 3 years later, in 1925, cirrhosis of the liver claimed him at age 45. He left behind an 18-month-old daughter, also named Gloria, who would later achieve fame as a fashion designer. But the most shocking revelation came after his death. The heir to the greatest fortune in American history had died broke. He'd blasted through his entire fortune and incurred huge debts besides. Only a $5 million trust fund remained, to be divided between his young widow and infant daughter. This trust would soon fuel the infamous custody battle that newspapers dubbed the trial of the century. Reginald's spectacular financial collapse represented the culmination of a multi-generational psychological progression. Unlike the Commodore, who created wealth through savage determination, unlike William Henry, who maintained it through anxious discipline, unlike Cornelius II, who balanced it with philanthropy, Reginald knew only consumption. His development lacked critical psychological inputs. The stern guidance of an authoritarian father had vanished during his formative years. Where earlier generations received validation only after demonstrating competence, Reginald enjoyed approval without corresponding expectations. Without an authority figure imposing boundaries, in psychological terms, Reginald exhibited classic third-generation syndrome. Having neither created wealth himself nor witnessed its creation, he lacked both skills and motivation for preservation. The psychological trajectory of the Vanderbilt fortune had reached its inevitable conclusion. The obsessive accumulation had transformed fully into pathological spending, and the infant Gloria, born into collapsing splendor, would carry this psychological inheritance into the next generation.
The dynasty ended with heiress-turned-fashion designer Gloria Vanderbilt. After her death in 2019, her son Anderson Cooper sorted through troves of letters, documents, and journals, giving voice to the Vanderbilt ancestors he never knew.
The poor little rich girl never stood a chance. Gloria Vanderbilt entered the world on February 20th, 1924. Born into the wreckage of a once great fortune, her identity already a national obsession. At 18 months old, her father Reginald died from cirrhosis, leaving her half of a $5 million trust fund, the meager remnants of the Vanderbilt fortune. The real inheritance proved psychological rather than financial. At age 10, Gloria became the unwilling center of a custody battle dubbed the trial of the century by ravenous Depression-era newspapers. Her mother, Gloria Morgan Vanderbilt, and paternal aunt, Gertrude Vanderbilt Whitney, battled for control of both the child and her trust fund. The courtroom became a theater of class warfare as Americans, mired in economic depression, devoured salacious details about the dysfunctional ultra-wealthy. After her aunt won custody, Gloria would later tell her son Anderson, "I had no relationship with her at all and just worshipped her from afar. I felt like an imposter." Gloria's relationship with wealth mirrored her fragmentary childhood, inconsistent, unstable, ultimately unreliable. Coming into her inheritance at 21, she embarked on a series of marriages and careers in art, acting, and eventually fashion design. In the 1970s, she launched her designer jeans line, her swan logo adorning millions of back pockets across America. At the height of success, she reportedly earned $10 million in royalties in 1980 alone. Yet the Commodore's pathology of money had morphed again. Gloria oscillated between making and losing fortunes. The 1980s brought catastrophe when Gloria discovered her lawyer had defrauded her of millions and failed to pay her taxes. The IRS placed a lien against her properties for $2.5 million. Forced to sell her homes, she faced financial ruin once more. Her son Anderson, born in 1967, watched this cycle with increasing wariness. By age 13, Cooper had begun working as a child model to earn his own money. "Work for me has been the thing which has gotten me through everything," he would later confess. Rather than resenting the absence of Vanderbilt wealth, Cooper embraced independence. "I don't believe in inheriting money," he declared, calling it an initiative sucker and a curse. He deliberately distanced himself from the Vanderbilt legacy, identifying as a Cooper, the surname of his father, who grew up poor in Mississippi. The final irony arrived in 2019 when Gloria died at 95. She left her son approximately $1.5 million, confirming that the Vanderbilt fortune had fully completed its evaporation. Yet something unexpected happened as Gloria's life concluded. Cooper, who had spent decades avoiding the Vanderbilt legacy, found himself drawn to understand it. In 2021, he co-authored Vanderbilt, The Rise and Fall of an American Dynasty, with historian Catherine Howe. His purpose was not to glorify family wealth, but to examine how money had warped each generation that touched it. The great fortune had come full circle. What began as a pathological fixation on accumulating wealth had produced 5 generations later a man who found psychological freedom by rejecting wealth's grip entirely. Cooper's financial independence achieved what the Vanderbilt fortune never could: genuine self-worth. The final descendant had escaped the gravity of his great-great-great-grandfather's obsession, and in this liberation lay the most valuable inheritance of all. And now, we'd love to see you in the comments. Which family member of the Vanderbilt family do you think did the most damage to the mental health of the dynasty, and why? We can't wait to hear your analysis of this one. And with that said, thanks for joining us for another episode of Old Money Luxury. Cheers until the next time.